It in the beginning where you think it's gone live, but you're not sure, and people are just looking up your nose. But I think we're live.
I think
Hi.
we're live.
This is funny. We're like children. I mean, we're like children who don't understand how things work. You and I. Like we're older. We probably should know how to do live streams, but this is still like such a new world for me.
Yeah, as far as we know, we could just be talking to each other for an hour straight, not know that anyone else is paying attention.
Yeah, nobody's interested. Nobody's commenting. Oh, that's all right. Maybe they're just so blown away by how deep our content is.
Yeah, they've crossed the threshold of infused contemplation.
Yep, yep. But it's really great to have you. How are you, Jason Everett?
Doing well. Enjoying the summer and the lack of homeschooling. So I don't know if I'm enjoying that as much as my children are, but we're both thrilled to have a break and just enjoying the Arizona summer, swim, living the dream.
Nice. Do your kids sleep in?
Some do, like my 14-year-old, he'll sleep till like 1 in the afternoon kind of thing.
Beautiful.
Whereas Lewis, our 8-month-old, he was up with me first thing this morning. So, and then we also just got a puppy because we only have 8 kids and 1 dog, and so we figured, we got to add to the mix. So I'll show you. Oh, this is our new. My 12-year-old daughter wanted a puppy, so we got the newest addition to the family. This is Meatball.
Did they name it?
8-week-old English Bulldog. Yeah, we all named it together. So that's a Meatball joining her big sister.
Yeah, show us the other one.
That's the bigger one is a South African Borbal, and so that's Megalodog, also known as Meg. So,
I remember you and I were in Pennsylvania at an airport, and we were sitting down, and you were just showing me YouTube videos of that kind of dog and how aggressive they can appear to people who are showing up at your house.
yeah, no, they're very family. They're called South African Borbals. They're actually bred in Africa to protect families and livestock against lions. And so lions want nothing to do with them. I mean, it's great. She's so protective. It's unfortunate that she thinks everyone comes to the door as a part of Al Qaeda, and so she gets a little bit
Like, tone it
a little bit
down.
worked up. Yeah. It's just UPS.
Oh, that's funny. I got to show people an image of my dog. You said the funniest thing when I showed you a picture of my dog, and that's what I want to show folks. You can't see it. I'm just going to share my screen real quick. So this is what my dog looks like. He's a black Russian terrier. And I sent you this video, Jason, or this image, and you said it looks like an orc should be riding him. It's nice when you can make yourself laugh with your own jokes.
Yeah.
But he's actually at the groomer right now, but he's massive. It's like a big piece of furniture. And he's really chill, which is nice because no one in our family is chill, so it's nice to have someone.
Yeah, he grounds y'all.
So how did you talk Kristalina into you getting another dog?
It was actually her idea, which was a shocker to me when my daughter said, "Oh, Mom said it's okay for me to get a dog." I'm like, "Wait, what?" And I didn't have a problem with it. So I mean, at first I was like, "No, okay." When Megalodog dies, then we'll bring on another dog. But then, if she was okay with it and the kids wanted it, I'm like, "Hey, what the heck?" It's kind of like kids. Mac and cheese for 7 kids, mac and cheese for 8 kids. There's hardly a noticeable difference. So once you hit that critical mass of chaos, it's just like, hey, let's just throw something else in there.
Who said that? I think it was Janet Smith had that great line where she said, after 4 or 5 kids, maybe it was you or Janet, you've reached a point of chaos from which you can never possibly return.
Yeah.
So you may as well.
Makes absolute sense. Yeah, I mean, the first kid, a lot of people who look at a big family think it's like having your first kid 5 or 10 consecutive times. But, the first kid, your life turns upside down. Second kid, it's crazy because you got a, man-on-man defense. And then once you got 3 kids, then you kind of go to a zone defense.
Yep.
And then after 3, 4, 5.
Okay. Speaking of sports, I have to share this with you because this just happened to me on the weekend and it was really funny. Do you know... Who's the Kansas team who just won the Super Bowl?
Chiefs.
Yeah. All right, here you go. This is really funny. So I was at the Latin Mass yesterday. Don't usually go, but we were visiting some friends. And after the Latin Mass, this man comes up to me, young man, super beautiful, looks like he's, half angel, half Viking. And he's a big fan of Pints with Aquinas. Oh, thanks, that's awesome. And he said he's the kicker for Kansas City Chiefs.
Oh, yeah.
Harrison Butker. And I actually, but I didn't know who they were or what sport it was. So he's like, yeah. So with the Chiefs, I'm like, oh, that's great. Is that baseball or football? He went,
Is that cricket?
yeah. He said, no, we won the Super Bowl. I went, oh, yeah, that's great, isn't it? He said, do you watch the Super Bowl? I went, yeah, no, but good on you.
Is that puppy thing they have?
Yeah. I've embarrassed myself on more than one occasion. I forget where I was traveling and speaking. Oh, actually, yeah, I was given a big men's conference, and there was one of the coaches from the Atlanta, they're called the Falcons, aren't they, the football team there?
Yep.
And he said, hey, I'd be happy to give you and your family tickets, to come by, maybe watch a training. And I said, and didn't realize it was offensive until I recounted it to my wife. I was like, nah, thanks, though.
Way to go.
Doesn't seem like something that would interest me.
Yeah, no, you guys can train on your own. Thanks.
Nah, don't know why anyone would want to. Are you into sports?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Mostly basketball. I like playing basketball with the kids. We go golfing, watch the stuff. I coached a little league team, and the assistant coach had been the medical doctor for the Phoenix Suns. And so he'd give us front row seats to like the pregame warm-ups of the Phoenix Suns, and we get to meet all the different stars on all the different teams, and the kids were in heaven. I mean, it was awesome. So,
do you know when I was a kid, I was a big Phoenix Suns fan.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because
my condolences.
We are. Yeah, I don't know. This is back in the days of Charles Barkley.
Oh yeah.
But I didn't ever really watch a game. It's just Australians are so kind of affected by American culture that we were all trading basketball cards and not knowing what we were doing. And I remember my dad painted the Suns logo on the backboard.
Oh, cool.
Isn't that funny?
No, I grew up enjoying all that because I lived here in Arizona growing up, so I was in the middle of all that, Barkley and all that, when they played the Bulls. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, this is cool. How are things been for you? Because I know that you obviously travel and speak a lot on the issue of chastity, but with coronavirus, everything kind of shut down. What's that been like?
It's been crazy. I mean, we had 25 plus events canceled. And no telling exactly when everything is going to get back. But it's been good because we've had to pivot and figure out, okay, how are we going to keep the message going and the ministry flourishing? And so we launched, the Love is Greater Than Lust podcast here. Then we also did the Catholic Love Life Conference and got about 40,000 people to attend that.
That seems super successful, yeah.
Yeah, so it's just been a matter of like, okay, we gotta, and for years I was like, I just don't have time for podcasts, I don't have time for that stuff. And then, with everything shutting down, it's really been a blessing that we were able to reach far more people through being locked down than we were by our own human efforts of trying to run all over the globe.
That's awesome. I'm actually subscribing right now while we're talking. I'm just typing in Jason Everett. Here it is. Love. And what does that sign mean? More than? Greater than?
Greater than, yeah. Love is greater than lust.
If people want to figure it out or find it, would they just type love? Would they just type Jason Everett probably?
Yeah, they could just type in Jason Everett. You can just type love and then the greater sign, is a little carrot thing. And, like you learn in math class, the alligator is always eating the bigger part. So starting to wonder, like, did I pick the best podcast title? Because people are having trouble punching it in. So still thinking through that one.
Well, hey, I just opened this up, and this lady says, or man, I don't know, I found this podcast last week and have listened to every single one. These have been life-changing. I have spent the past week immersing myself in the topics you have been discussing. Thank you, and thank you. It's awesome, dude.
Well, that's awesome. Almost reminds me of one day a boy came up to me and he said, I got your Pure Love book lit and I read it in one weekend, the whole thing. I'm thinking like it's only 40 pages, but like good on you. We only have 5 podcasts.
That's true.
Podcasts in the can, so I'm glad that those have been a blessing.
I have listened to every single one.
Both of them. But no, it's been neat. We've been doing some neat shows. A neat interview with Christopher West. And then we had a fun show called "Should Christian Women Wear Bikini?" A woman. She just had some amazing insights on that of just like how when women are in a bathing suit, in a bikini, how they won't make eye contact with men around the pool.
Interesting.
And I was like, it's just such a disconnect of intimacy that they feel so exposed and so revealed, but at the same time to look another person in the eye while showing so much. Just create something where they and I think maybe they're avoiding eye contact because they know the men aren't looking back at their eyes, and they don't want to see that. I mean, who knows? But it was a really profound interview where she had a lot of gems to share, and one of the neatest things we shared was from some scientific research they did where they had college guys and girls take tests while wearing bathing suits. And they found that the guys who took the test wearing bathing suits, their test scores didn't differ at all. But the women who took a test, and this is with no one else in the classroom, no one was watching, no windows. They just took a test alone. Women taking the test in a bathing suit got twice as many answers wrong on the test. And the
Interesting.
scientists said it's called self-objectification, and they said that the girl wearing like the leggings, glass or whatever, short crop top, whatever, the person most distracted by her outfit is not the boy sitting next to her. The person most distracted by her outfit is herself.
Mm.
And it's just a lot of interesting stuff on that podcast. But I'm glad to hear people have been watching it. It's been a blessing for them.
Yeah. So okay, it's what's most impressive. It's funny. I'm battling in my head with questions I think other people want to know and questions I want to know. So forget other people. This is about me. So the questions that I'm interested in is how have you stayed so committed to the topic of chastity and not got bored of it and wanted to do something else? Because I'm like a Jack Russell with the attention span of a goldfish. There's two animal analogies,
Yeah.
but I just it's really difficult for me to stay on topic for long periods of time.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think it's not anything because of me. I think it's a gift from God that he gave me to feel as passionate about this today as I did when I got started 20 something years ago. And so I think it's just a gift from him that, people have told me like, don't you get bored like giving the same talk over and over and over again? But like to me, that's never set in. I've never even felt an ounce of that. Just, I think partly is because every high school assembly I walk into, it's fresh. It's
Yeah.
brand new. And those kids have never heard the message before, and they're starving for it. And every experience is new. I was in a public school a while ago, and the principal, you could tell he's pretty nervous, and he gets up there and he's introducing me in front of like 1,000 public school kids, and he's like, well, today's speakers are going to talk to us about sexuality, and it's going to be very moving, and he's going to reach out and he's going to touch you. Just
No.
went, "Ah!" Just like a bunch of chimpanzees on a Super Bowl commercial, and then he just hands me the mic, and I'm like, great, yeah, I'll take that from here. Thank you very much. So, I mean, to me, it just never gets bored. Just looking into the eyes of these high school kids, and just seeing the light bulb turning on, and then afterwards tell them, hey, if you want to hang out and talk, I'll be here to listen. And then they form this line that's hours long, and then you hear all their confessions, and you don't absolve anybody. But it's just what keeps it new is them more than me.
Yeah.
Just seeing the newness in their eyes when they hear the gospel.
Yeah, I was going through a period where I was getting really tired of traveling and was hoping to kind of cut back. But I have to say, after these 3 months of being at home, I really do miss the teens. I just have a real love for them. I mean, I just really enjoy them. I just think they're fun and awkward and goofy, kind of like me. And I just love the chats I have with them afterwards. What's funny is like you were working at Catholic Answers when Catholic Answers brought me on to talk about chastity, and I just wanted to talk about porn to people. And at the time, the schools were like, no, just do a slightly less entertaining talk than Jason does on chastity, But over the last few years, like that just changed, where it's like I can't keep up with the demand to speak about porn.
Yeah.
So what have you seen as far as just there's been so much shift in the culture and the view of sexuality, and what's been kind of some of the biggest things that have changed from when you started doing this to now?
Yeah, I mean, well, the biggest game changer is this. I mean, cell phones. I mean, because when you and I were growing up, that wasn't an issue, internet porn. I mean, I've said before that, like the first time I ever saw internet porn, I was at a friend's house, and he had the dial-up World Wide Web kind of thing with, 10 hours of free AOL online with a floppy disk or whatever, and he calls me out. He's like, hey, you can see porn on the computer, and I'm like, you serious? And he's like, yeah. He's like, come on over. So I come over, and he's like, yeah, it just takes a while, and he's downloading this image like pixel by pixel by pixel, and by the time the image this grainy blur, it took so long. I'd basically finished puberty and lost interest altogether. I mean, and it's just so shifted now where every kid's got in his pocket 10 billion X-rated bookstores, and I think that's shifted. It started first with the guys, and now the girls have caught up, and and struggling in this area, and to me that's been the big game changer. That a kid can't even go to the bathroom for 5 minutes without struggling with this addiction of, what am I going to look at on Instagram or whatever in the 2 minutes they have in the bathroom. And so, I've heard you say before that, you used to like spend time, money, and effort to avoid porn, and now you have to spend time and money and effort to, or to see. You have to spend that money to see it. Now you got to spend that to avoid it. And so
Yeah.
I think that's a big issue.
Do you struggle with like meeting parents where they're at and telling them some things that they can do to better regulate their child's internet use, as opposed to just tell them like the full correct here's what you should do answer? Because I just want to tell old parents to do not give your child a smartphone. This is a stupid idea. But I also know we need to meet people where they're at, and we don't want to kind of turn them off just so we can say something, strong sounding.
Well, I think the key is getting not only to the teens earlier and earlier, but getting to the parents earlier and earlier. I've had parents bring their child to my chastity talk when the kid is literally 6 months old, because they want to hear, okay, how do I start teaching this to my kid, even though obviously at 6 months of age, he can't absorb any of this, that we've got to start younger with the parents of like, okay, does my 12-year-old really need an iPhone 11, buzzing under her pillow all night long? Well, the answer is no. And if the kids understand this before they turn 14 years old, you're like, oh, well, we need to start taking this away a little bit. It's kind of like dating. I got parents coming to me like, well, my 15-year-old's been dating this person for 2 years, and, how do I break them up? It's like, okay, this conversation should have started when that kid was 10 of what's the purpose of dating, not only the right person, but the right time.
Yeah, you do a really good job at like communicating these truths in a very non-judgmental way. I think that's why people really appreciate you, because it's such a bloody hard thing to remain chaste in this culture. It's a difficult thing to raise children in this culture, and I think my tendency sometimes is to come off too strong. But I really appreciate how you do it, because I think people like really feel understood, like you understand where they're coming from and the difficulty of it, and you can kind of gently tell them what they absolutely need to hear.
Yeah, well, I think every approach is needed. I mean, some people need a smack upside the head. Some people need a hug. Some people need both. And I think God gives each of us our own charism.
Yeah.
That's the means by which we should bring the gospel forward. And it would be a mistake for me to try to be Matt Fradd, you to be me to be Mother Teresa. Everybody's got to be who God created them to be.
That's a really good point. I was giving a talk in Louisiana. I was talking to this parent after the talk, and I was saying that she should take her children out of Catholic school and homeschool them, and that if she were to read good books to her kids on her couch, the kids would end up far better probably than they would right now. She was sharing with me some stuff that was going on. And she said, what am I going to do? Just like homeschool them and send them off to college? I said, why would you send them to college? It seems like a stupid idea. That was kind of supposed to be funny, but it's also true. It's almost like we have to change the way we think about how we educate our children. A lot of these like colleges are just cesspools where children are, brainwashed and act like hookers who don't get paid, or pimps, and it's gross.
Yeah, I know one Catholic dad when I used to live in Denver who would deliberately not send his kids to the local Catholic schools because he said, look, if I send my kids to the public school, at least they know they're not getting a Catholic education. If they go to the Catholic school, they'll think they're getting a Catholic education and be surrounded by kids who are not living the faith at all, and then they'll be so scandalized by that. He said, look, I'm going to send them to the public school. It's going to be a boot camp. They're going to get bruised up a little bit, but they're going to be able to come home. We'll be able to work through those challenges. They're going to be toughened up and strengthened. So by the time they head off to college, they're going to know how to defend their faith. And hey, that's his fatherly approach of just pushing them out into the world, with that fatherly love and guidance.
Sounds like a stupid idea to me. Just sounds like ridiculous. Maybe in the 80s, but now I'd say you're a bad parent to push your kids into a public school.
Yeah, and it depends. I mean, every parent, for him, it's like he had such a relation with his kids where they could get home from school and be like, hey, this thing happened, that thing happened. And that was his way of kind of training him for the real world. I know other people be like, hey, yank those kids out because it's, like you said, a cesspool. But I think even in the college environment, you look at some major secular state universities have unbelievable faith environments like Texas A&M or University of Illinois. Like where they've got focus that's flourishing. They've got thousands of kids going to Sunday mass, whereas you get
I think
some Catholic school name in the title, but lifestyle there is anything but.
I think but the point in which you send them off to college, hopefully you understand that they're probably more well formed, than others, and so you can send them off knowing there's a good community to plug into. Awesome. So I don't know how to awkwardly transition to this, but I know you just started a Patreon page, and I just wanted to kind of tell people about that because Patreon's something I started up about 3 years ago now, and it's been really helpful to me. And I would just love you to be able to tell people what people get from your Patreon page, because I know you've probably lost a lot of money because you speak at high schools and colleges and all these different places, and you haven't had work for 3 months.
Yeah, Yeah, no, it's been an adventure. The mainstream of income into the family and the ministry is doing all these assemblies. And, when I was, before I got married, we'd be doing like sometimes 28 days a month of travel and speaking. And then, once we got married, we had to cut it down to 9 days, but we still pack in 150 assemblies a year. And so
Whew.
with COVID-19, everything's just been upended. And so it's like, okay, got 8 kids, got to figure out how to, support the family. I want to keep the ministry growing and thriving and all that. And so, I look, okay, well, Matt did the Patreon thing. We'll give that a try. And so we found it to be this could be a real promising way to keep the ministry floating and moving forward and growing because, the podcasts aren't cheap between the mics, the tech, the audio engineering and all that stuff. And so we decided, look, let's invest. Let's just get everything we need to get this podcast up and running. And, if God wants it to happen, he's going to bless it. And so through Patreon, how it works is someone can give, whether it's $5 a month or 10, 20, 50, whatever. And for each tier of support, you get different stuff kicked back to you, whether it's early, exclusive access to content. We'll send you free autographed books. Free T-shirts, free personal video call, free phone call. We'll give you our email for some of the tiers. We'll correspond with you. You got questions, just shoot them to our personal email account. And so for anyone who joins the next month or so at a certain tier, we'll give you a personal phone call same day.
This looks awesome.
Just
I'm looking at this.
Thank you.
I'm looking at it right now.
So depending on how much you want to give, we want to make you feel like you're getting 10 times as much back. And so if our ministry's impacted or blessed you in any way in the last 20 years, this would be a huge way to help us keep the ministry growing during this time.
What's your goal for the ministry at this point? Because I feel like in the beginning it was like, I'm going to speak to as many human beings as possible, which is probably still your goal. But how's Chastity going to grow from here, Chastity Project?
Yeah, well, that goal has remained unchanged. I remember once I was flying to Boston and reading a little National Geographic book about what was going on in Colombia, in Medellin, Colombia, the drug cartel, these kids on the streets, sniffing glue and drugs and teen prostitution. And I'm reading this, I'm like, my God, like, how could I ever get to these kids? How can I get this message over there? And, sometimes the cries of our heart, God sees them as prayers, even if we don't formulate them as prayers. And my plane lands, the host picks me up, takes me to the first event, and a woman there at the parish welcomes me. Oh, welcome, thank you. I'm like, oh, your accent, where are you from? She said, I'm from Colombia. I'm like, oh, really? Where? She says, Medellin, Colombia. And I said, really? I said, if I were to give you chastity booklets in Spanish, could you bring them to the teenagers in Medellin? And she said, yes, I'm going in a couple weeks. Send me several hundred. And it was just, God. And so to me, that's what I want to do. I believe there's so many infantry troops in the church, like boots on the ground, that just don't have the arsenal. They don't have the ammo. And so all the resources that we've created of, dozens and dozens of books and CDs, we make that dirt cheap on the website so that people can give that stuff away. And if they can't afford it, they can just email us on the website and say, hey, I want to give away 500 books on my college campus. And then we just send it to you for free. There was one university that had a sex fair on campus, and they are promoting BDSM and Planned Parenthood and contraception, all this stuff. And the Catholic kids were like, oh, sex fair? Well, the church has something to say about sex. We want to have a booth too. And so they got a booth, had it at the sex fair, and they called it Plan C. So Plan C for chastity instead of Plan B for the birth control, and had all the free books that we shipped them. And they gave them away to all the college kids. They did an exit survey, and they asked the college students, what's the number one thing you learned at this year's sex fair? And the number one reply from these secular college kids was chastity.
No way.
Yeah. So my goal is like, hey, let's just mobilize the troops, and we can be kind of arms dealers to give all these resources to them, and then they can spread the message way beyond what I could do on my own.
That's awesome. No, I've always appreciated how you've done that. I mean, this is kind of how you and I got to know each other. I was kind of doing ministry up in Canada, and I was giving all these big talks to men and women, and I wrote to you, and you didn't know me from Adam, and you just send me boxes of books literally for free. And I was so impressed by that. So I'm just so grateful that you continue to do this work.
No, I think we overestimate how many people we can reach on our own, instead of kind of using that force multiplier of like, if I can go down, we can raise up so many more people. And so our goal is just to get those things in the hands of people. And I know people keep them in like boxes of them in their trunk to give to their hairdresser or their whoever they meet on the street, and you never ever know when a divine appointment's going to happen, and you got stuff to give people.
So, Jason, tell me how you became a Catholic. I presume you were baptized as a baby and raised in a Catholic family, but obviously your faith means a ton to you. How did that come about? How did you make the Catholic faith your own?
Yeah, well, I was raised in a Catholic family, had a good Catholic mom. My mom, when she met my dad, he was Lutheran, and but she only wanted to marry a Catholic guy. And so he's like, oh, okay, and so I don't know the full details of, his decision to enter the faith, but he, before they got married, he entered the Catholic Church, they got married, and, it's all I ever knew was a stable, happy marriage. My grandparents have been married on one side for 66 years, on the other side for, I think it was 72 years of marriage until death do they part. And then my parents have married almost 50 years. And to me, that's the greatest legacy of what they gave to me. Is just like, hey, you stick at it when it's tough. And so we were raised in this Catholic family, and we'd go to mass on Sundays, and grace before meals, and it wasn't a lot of catechesis at home and things like that, but it was just living it. It wasn't so much talking about it, and that might have been more my father's German temperament of, you keep your faith, you live it out, you do it yourself. It's not something you shove in people's faces, but I just watched them live it. And to me, when I grew up in that environment, towards high school, I started to drift a little bit, kind of, one foot on both sides of the fence. I had my church friends, and then I had my not so church friends. And I figured, well, I'm a good person. I don't need to go overboard. I'm somewhere between Mother Teresa and Osama bin Laden, right in that little niche. And, things are good. But I was looking at porn. I was vandalizing with my friends. I was doing stupid stuff and going to church on Sunday. And I think God has kind of made us rational beings where our belief needs to line up with our behavior. And if something doesn't match there, we got to get rid of one of them. And it's a lot easier to get rid of your beliefs than your behavior.
Oh, good way to put it.
But God was meeting me there right at the right time with confirmation with Life Teen. Our parish was the second one ever to have Life Teen, and we had a very Eucharistic parish. And so our youth minister wasn't just like, hey, let's go pray with clay and do a labyrinth and play with, he was like, okay, Wednesdays Eucharistic adoration with the Rosary before the Blessed Sacrament. Like, it was meat and potatoes. Yeah, it was fun. We had all that water park and stuff, but it was also truly giving us the faith. And so that high school experience was very pivotal for me in Life Teen, and then it was off to Steubenville after that, where I think things really flourished.
That's really awesome. That's really great.
And how about you?
Well, as you probably know, don't you? Do you know most of this?
Some of it. Give me.
Well, I don't want to go into it too much, but because I don't want to bore folks. But I mean, I was born and raised a Catholic. But didn't really. I don't think there was ever kind of a solid and manful presentation of the faith given to me. Nothing that I could actually hear and then reject. It was all pretty wishy-washy. So some kind of vague concept of a God who loved me and had a plan for my life and wanted good things to happen, and everything happens for a reason. That kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And people would say prayer is really important, but they didn't pray. Or they'd tell me that the church has done away with like sex before marriage. You can have sex before marriage, and hell doesn't really exist. And I remember in my high school years, like we'd be put on music ministry, right? And you might be thinking, oh no, did you bring in a guitar and play some songs, and were they not very good? No, it was worse than that. We were actually we could choose any song we wanted to play out of the CD player. And so I remember like choosing Metallica to play at Holy Mass. Have I told you that?
No, I didn't know that one. It's a slight liturgical abuse.
but it's definitely a liturgical abuse.
Yeah.
But I'm more frustrated and not so much disappointed. I'm just sad. I'm sad that we weren't ever presented. Like,
was it Enter Sandman for the processional hymn, or like Fade to Black when they're turning like what?
It was. I'm impressed that you know those two.
Yeah.
No, it was. I think it was Mama Said. And we tried to say something like, see, it's like Mary and Jesus talking to Mary. We tried to say, and they were like, yeah, whatever, it's fine. Yeah. But it's just really sad that no one ever sort of treated us like grown-ups and introduced us to the beautiful mysteries of the faith. It was always like watered down, and for offertory, like we'd go up, not with the bread and the wine, but also things like, like a cricket bat and like a football, because we're giving everything to God. And it was just like, this is so cheesy. Whereas I feel like if I was raised in a mass that it was celebrated reverently, I may have abandoned it, but I could have respected it. But I just couldn't really respect this. And in part, maybe I was just a snotty little kid as well, and so not really open to anything. But So when I was 17 years old, my mum invited me to go to World Youth Day in Rome. Did you go there?
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
2000?
I was there. Yeah, that's
amazing.
That's where I got to meet this guy. That was that right after that. So he's the Pope's in the white. I'm in the dark.
Okay, good.
Yeah,
good.
sometimes people can.
So I went there, and I was just so blown away by the joy of these people, by the fact that they had reasons to believe what they did, that they weren't kind of like getting drunk. They didn't use foul language like I did. They were just good folks, you know. And I remember that really kind of opened up my mind to the possibility of this whole God thing being real. And yeah, I don't know what else to say except that just my heart woke up, and it was like I began experiencing the world in color. And up until that point, my heart felt frozen, you know, it was just dead, and everything else seemed dead and meaningless. And that is the best way to kind of describe it. Like, imagine if you had only ever seen the world in black and white, and then one day you looked up and it was color, and you're like, oh my gosh, I need to be obnoxious and tell everybody about this. And so that's kind of what I did, you know.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. I think a lot of people had those conversions at World Youth Day, just being in not only the presence of all the other Catholics, but just being in the presence of John Paul II. Just being in the presence of a living saint. I mean, there was something so edifying about being in the presence of a man who lives his life in the presence of God at that level, at that depth of prayer. So, I mean, sometimes people have a conversion. He just drives by in the Pope mobile, and just something hits him and strikes him. So I know when I got to meet him face to face, it was like a second conversion experience just to look in his eyes.
Yeah, you know, it's very easy, like for many people in the church right now, hey, like they've been brought into the church, they've discovered the beauty and the riches of tradition. Maybe they go to a Latin mass or like a very reverent Novus Ordo or something. It's very easy for people to then look down their nose at ministries that like helped you and helped me. You know, like I know of people who would say like, World Youth Day is just all the kids are partying and getting drunk. It's just an excuse, you know, or they'll say like bloody Life Teen, you know, look at them, all this. And you're like, okay, we just need to just chill out a second, because when I was at that stage in my life, when you're at that stage in your life, you know, just having someone come up to me and like pointing at the Latin Mass, as great as it is, and be like, see, do you see now? I would have been like, no, it's weird. It's like I needed someone to kind of venture out to where I was in the quote unquote culture, if we have that society, this thing, and then just sort of draw me in, you know. And I'm so grateful to how Life Teen and World Youth Day does that. And that doesn't mean we can't offer like legitimate criticisms or ways things can improve. But
I think sometimes we lose sight of who our opponents versus teammates are. I mean, people will come to me and say, oh, you know, you're doing these chastity talks. You know, what's some of your other competition out there? Like, are there other abstinence and chastity speakers besides you? I'm like, no. I think you misunderstand. Like, those are not my opponents. You know, those are not my competition. My competition is Planned Parenthood and Playboy, not other chastity speakers. If you confuse your teammates with your opponents, you're pretty certain to lose the whole game.
That's a great way to put it. And just like you would speak to your teammates, you know, if you were encouraging them to do better or to show them how they could do better, you might have opinions on that, you know? That's awesome. And you would speak to them in love and reverence, and you would go just the two of you together, you know, like our Lord says. Like, you wouldn't talk to them like an enemy. You wouldn't be kind of dismissive.
Yeah, we need some more ecumenism within the church itself.
Yeah, that's really cool. To everybody watching right now, Jason and I are happy to take your questions. So let's see, on my YouTube channel, we've got around 200 people watching. I know you're launching this on Facebook as well, Jason. So people can start writing in your questions, and when you do, I will post the question to the screen, and people will see your name and see your question, and we'll get to that. How's things going over there on Facebook? Anyone watching?
Let's see. I'm looking over on here, checking out a couple. Someone likes the lighting that you have over there, Matt. They're commenting on the nice lighting. So.
Thank you.
Let's see. Lots of nice comments. We haven't asked for questions yet, so I don't think we've gotten a lot of questions. So feel free, go ahead, type in questions in Facebook as those pop up. We will take those. Hellos from Canada.
Someone
Argentina.
said, oh, here we go. All right, here's a question. I'm going to throw this up on the screen so everybody can read it here. This person says, Godnod says, how to know how to balance marriage, family, and ministry. Is it bad to put ministry above family? How do you put family first but give all you can to ministry? What a great question.
Yeah. Well, the motto should be souls before spouses, ministry before marriage, right, Matt? Is that how it's supposed to go, or is that upside down? No,
It's
that's
a
upside down.
great way to ruin your marriage. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's very easy to sacrifice your marriage on the altar of your ministry and allow your zeal for souls to cannibalize your entire family. That's from hell. And so at the end of the day, what's most important is the vocation, is the family, and that comes preeminent before all. I was just commenting, I think last week, Christopher West met Pope John Paul II, gave him a book of, oh, look, there's my theology body. And John Paul flipped it over and saw a picture of his family on the back. And that's all that John Paul cared about. Just started talking about his family. And Christopher West thinking, oh, but the book, the theology. But he said it was very impactful for him to know that the Holy Father's interest was not in his academic chops.
Wow.
It was on, are you living it out? As a father, that's where it's at. I'll never forget, I remember Pope John Paul II, I once saw a video of him walking down an aisle greeting pilgrims, and he came to this small family of maybe 3 or 4 kids, with the wife and the mother, and he blessed the kids, and then he blessed the wife, and then he looked at the father, and he reached over, and he kind of grabbed his arm and pulled him close and just gave him this huge smile. And it was just, as a father, it's like, whoa, like he's just giving him this blessing, this encouragement, like you're doing what needs to be done. And so a friend of mine, Devin Shad, he said a priest told him once, don't become a street light only for your house to become dark. And so we need
what
to
a great line.
Let that punch you in the gut. Like,
yeah.
We just released a podcast a couple of days ago where a woman asked this question, like, well, isn't it true that, if you want to be a mother, that you don't have to give up all your aspirations for the apostolate, the ministry, business, and whatever? And my answer was kind of like, you know what? Like, we're too quick to say, no, you don't have to give up stuff. But you know what? You do. It's going to cost you. You're going to have to hold back in terms of the ministry. And even St. Paul talks about this. He says, the single woman is anxious about the things of the Lord, and how she can please him. But the married woman is anxious about the family and a husband and stuff like that. And he's not saying that that's a bad thing. That's the order of things. Our vocation comes before occupation or souls. What would you add to that, Matt?
Well, I was just going to ask you, like, is there a time in your life where you realized you were kind of putting ministry before family and maybe something happened and you kind of woke up to it?
Well, it's been a journey in terms of the both of us of trying to figure out, okay, where's that sweet spot with how much I can be traveling on the road and taking care of the family to bring in income, and how much time I need to be home to be taking kids to school and helping them. And so, Crystal's been very clear that, hey, 9 days a month, we have a limit, 9 days a month, no more than 2 nights at a time. And so that's how we set it up. So I'm home more than 22 days a month with the family, and then we pretty much take summers off. And so it's been a learning curve of getting to where's that right spot, and like, do I need to cancel this talk? 'Cause like, we just had a trip to Ireland I had to cancel. And there was controversy brewing over there, but we still had events ready to go. And the night before, like, we've got, of all the kids, I think 6 of them were sick. My wife was sick in the bathroom, throwing up. I come down the hallway, my daughter Mary's crying, throwing up, and I'm sitting there packing my bags, getting ready to go to the airport at 5 o'clock in the morning. And it's like, oh man, it's just like one of those moments, like these people have been planning this event for like a year, and now my everybody's sick. My wife can hardly stay out of bed, and you had to make that tough call of like, okay, this is one of those moments where you don't dump it on her. Because if you don't set limits to this thing, then you'll make your wife feel like, oh, honey, I got this other gig. Can we take this too? Oh, I got this other conference. Can we take this also? And then she's left like, okay, if I don't let him go, kids are going to be like losing their virginity. If I let him go, I'm going to lose my sanity.
And my kids will lose their lives.
Yeah, so someone's going to lose something. It's going to be virginity or my sanity. Something's got to go. But it's not a decision you should have to burden them with. You need to make that decision. You need to make that call and put the family first. And if you do, you might feel like you're reaching less people, but God's going to be able to take care of them. Your job's your domestic church.
Yeah, I think for me, I think people naturally like to do what they feel successful at. I think you grow older, and at some point you stop trying new things because you're comfortable with the things that you can do, and you don't want to try something that'll remind you that you fail at things, and I know for me, there's definitely been times in my marriage where I'm like, you know what, I'm better at running a podcast and giving talk to teens than I am at being with my kids sometimes.
Oh, yeah.
I see my impatience, I see my frustration. I would love to kind of go out, crush this talk, do this thing, hear how it's changing lives. And then I'm like, what do you want to do? Just come home and just like be in the house and and just like how do I determine whether I'm succeeding at this? You know, and the kids are upset, the house is a bit messy, I got to navigate relationships, and there's definitely been times where I just want to hide. I just want to go and do the thing I'm good at the expense of my family, and God have mercy on me for that. So, but I think kind of acknowledging that is probably the first step, or at least a helpful step to not doing it, like admitting that, like, sometimes we talk about, I'm doing this all for the kingdom. It's like, yeah, maybe, but maybe not. Like, maybe you're doing this because you like those YouTube views, right? Or you like the Patreon money, or you like, people clapping and giving you a standing ovation. And that's a difficult thing to admit, but like, it's definitely true of me at times. And so we had the gospel recently in the Byzantine church of, unless you're willing to pick up your cross and follow me, you can't have eternal life, basic message. And yeah, it's just, you see so many dads, and I'm just speaking as a man, who like throw off the quote unquote burden of marriage to pursue life, but it ends in death. I remember I grew up, and one of my best friend's dad, I'm not going to be specific here. Obviously, I don't want to, I won't even say the sex of my friend, but my best friend's dad, just at some point gave up, and he left the family and he moved to a country nearby, and he dyed his hair, so he's just like this like old fat dude with bleach blonde hair, like hitting on girls. And I remember just all of our friends being like, that's so gross. But but like, I get it, right? Like, there is that temptation to pursue life. And sometimes when you're in marriage and kids and the stress of it all, it's like, I want to breathe, and sometimes it's so bloody difficult that the devil can come in and tempt you and say, like, this isn't what God wants, But I think what happens is, if you abandon the responsibility God's given you in pursuit of what looks like life, it'll just end up sour and it'll be death. Whereas, as our Lord says, if you pick up your cross and follow me, like that's the way to eternal life. And I think that's true in ministry as well,
I remember a friend who went through a divorce, not because he wanted to, but because his spouse left him. And then a friend of his got divorced as well. And his take on the whole thing is that either you stay on the cross or your kids will be crucified. Somebody's going to need to be on a cross. It's just a matter of whether it's you or it's the kids. Somebody's going to get on that cross. And it doesn't mean that there's never a valid reason for a separation, cases of abuse. And I think a lot of people who've been through separation, through divorce, almost feel like third-class citizens in the church. Like, well, no sainthood for you. You obviously got divorced, so you're a little less holy than everybody else. But like, man, the circumstances of every particular family is so unique. And some people are heroically pursuing sanctity as single parents after having left abusive relationships, and now they're holding the family together and the kids and things like that. So like, there's circumstances where those things are peculiar paths by which God calls people to sainthood. Other times God calls them to sainthood within abusive relationships. You look at Saint Rita. She didn't have a choice to leave her abusive marriage because of the century in which she lived. But, no matter what path God is calling you to stay, to go, to whatever, like, there's going to be the cross. And the key is embracing what that cross is. And but yeah, no, the easy path is grass. What do they say? If you think the grass is always greener on the other side, maybe you should start watering your own grass.
That's good. All right, let's see here. Emily Ann Lucy G says, I love Crystalina's story of how she came into the faith, sought healing, and discerned marriage with you. Can you say a little more about what was going on your side during her journey of healing?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a continual journey. I think the mistake a lot of people think is like, okay, I did the journey of healing and now we're done and now we're moving forward. Like, it's a continual process. I remember when she first opened up and shared with me about her past, we were just seeing each other, just starting to date, and she came out to visit me in San Diego, and I said, hey, I got a chastity talk tomorrow. Do you want to get on stage and do your testimony too? Just 5 minutes. And she's like, deer in headlights thing, because at that point, we were just, I don't even know if we were officially dating yet or we were just friends. I forget where we were at. But she hadn't told me her story. And so I was assuming, she's just going to get up there and talk chastity. And she said, well, what would I say if I got up there? And I said, well, let's go to adoration. Jesus will tell you. And so she's like, okay, so we go into adoration. And we came out of the chapel, and I said, oh, well, what do you think? And she said, well, first I want to talk to you, before I talked to any teens. And then that night she kind of showed about her past and the life that she had been through. And, she was really worried, like, how am I going to console him when he hears about my past? But what ended up happening is I was the one consoling her. I was the one trying to reassure her that you're a new creation, and every morning God's mercies are new. And the next morning she got up and she shared for 5 minutes in front of those high school kids her testimony, and she just knocked them dead. The kids are coming up afterwards, hugging her and crying and dumping their boyfriends, and like, and so it was it's been a journey. I mean, that was 20 years ago, but you continue to fight and to wrestle and to struggle, and you just got to be patient, because a lot of times wounds don't happen overnight. They don't go away overnight either.
That's so great. I'm so glad you're kind of speaking so openly about that, because I think it's so easy for people to sort of look to people like yourself, or maybe even my wife and I, or other people, and all they see is the bit you put out for them, right? So it's like the shinier side, or so it's like I share a resolution that we came to after a fight that we didn't talk about. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I share the making up. I don't share the bit where I'm like, wow, we were literally shouting at each other, and I just think that sometimes can lead people to feel really alienated, because they look at their own life and they think something is fundamentally wrong with them, because they're comparing their lives with imaginary lives of Catholic writers and things. And
oh yeah, no, and we do our audience is such a tremendous disservice by candy coating the sacrament and candy coating natural family planning and the theology of the body and everything. And so people think, okay, I got my Steubenville marriage. I learned the theology of the body. I went to the TOB Institute. I listened to all Matt Fradd's Pints with Aquinas, and we jump into marriage. And then it's like, wait a minute, this is hard. This is difficult. This is painful. Did we do something wrong? Did we miss something? And I think it's just because sometimes we're not open and honest enough with people. So like I've told audiences before, like Crystalline and I have gone to marriage counseling before. Heck, we have a marriage counseling appointment tomorrow. We actually have one scheduled tomorrow, Skype with a counselor to talk through some stuff. And I'm not ashamed to say that in front of your audiences and my audiences, because like, hey, any prime minister or president has a cabinet of ministers who counsel him on different matters, and that's the only way that they can succeed is if they tap into minds wiser than their own. And so in the same respect, yeah, Crystal and I go to marriage counseling sometimes because we need it. I mean, and so if for us to pretend like, hey, marriage has been a bed of roses, just this walk in the park, and everything you see on our Instagram, Facebook, that's all it is, just glowing Photoshop images. Like, nope, that's not reality. It's really tough. Even if we give motivational talks and have DVDs out, It's really hard. And I think if people just heard that before marriage, then when Jesus Christ crucified visits them in their marriage, they're not going to be overly discouraged, because they'll realize, okay, I heard that this could be hard.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thanks for sharing that. Seamus O'Brien says, what are 5 great books, present company of authors excluded, that you would suggest for recent college graduates? I don't know. Yeah, well, do you want to?
Yeah, I'll give a couple. You can give a couple. I mean, my favorite book, hands down, would be Love and Responsibility by St. John Paul II. It's a little dense in places, philosophically, but there's, you might feel like you're mining through a mountain, but there's real gems in there that you're going to discover. So Love and Responsibility. And then in terms of any ministry, I would recommend is Soul of the Apostolate by Jean-Baptiste Chattard. Soul of the Apostolate. It is a kick in the pants. Anyone doing any form of ministry, this should be mandatory reading. And then lastly, just on a devotional, I would say The Way by Saint Jose Maria Escriva. It's about 1,000 little short quotes, but they're just these little one smack in the head, upside the head with each one. I love Saint Jose Maria Escriva because his spiritual direction is so terse to the point, and he just doesn't mince words with you. And I just appreciate that after hearing too many wish-washy messages in the church. He's a real breath of fresh air.
Yeah, I agree. It's a great book. As far
Any two that you'd recommend, 2 or 3, and then I got a question that came in too for you.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, as far as spiritual books, I'm reading a lot of Father Jacques Philippe right now. His book, Searching for and Maintaining Peace, I find is just incredible. And his books are quite short, but beautiful and dense. It's really like sitting with a father who loves you and just sort of drinking it all up. My favorite fiction book is The Brothers Karamazov, I think. And there's this beautiful line that, and you might think, oh, that's fiction, so that's not necessarily applicable to my struggles in life, but you'd be wrong if you were to think that. I mean, there's this really beautiful line in The Brothers K where, have you read it, Jason? Jason?
I have not.
Yeah. There's this line where
Yeah,
Ivan.
can you hear me? Yeah. No,
Yeah. So Ivan Karamazov is just like very sort of sensual, effusive sort of character, and he's in love with this woman called Grushenka. And he talks about like wanting to just leave with her away to the edges of Russia somewhere and to start again, or maybe to move even to America. And they would begin their lives anew, and everything would be good, and they would be moral, and life would be beautiful. And Dostoevsky says something like, like many people, he thinks that what he needs is a change of scenery as opposed to like a change in himself. And I just see that in myself so often. Like I'm looking for something new, out there, some sort of change that will make things better as opposed to doing the kind of hard work of growing in virtue. It's just a profound book, and so I would highly recommend that. You have a question?
Yeah, this one comes in from Joel. He asks, our youth group consists of 3 to 7 youth every Wednesday. Out of those youth, only one is faithful to Sunday Mass. It is very discouraging as a youth leaders, and my wife and I don't know what else to do to motivate them to go to Mass. Any suggestions on what to do?
Yeah, I don't know. I would, it's like that old saying, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it go to Holy Mass, I guess, I'm sure y'all are doing everything you can to talk to them about the importance of Holy Mass, the beauty of the sacraments, and things like this. So I suppose there's a fine line to walk. You want to emphasize the importance of Mass and why youth group isn't a substitute to going to Holy Mass, even why it's a sin to avoid Mass. But at the same time, you don't want to sort of harp on them so much that they stop coming to youth group, because your youth group might be the doorway through which they come to Holy Mass.
Yeah. Yeah, a couple thoughts too. I know Ascension Press has created some great learning systems for teens on the Mass, and so go over to Ascension, to their website, check out some of their learning systems, and I know they've done 1 or 2 specifically on the Mass, and so you could check out those. They have a program called Chosen that's excellent. It's for confirmation and also just faith formation in general. So that way, if they can taste the beauty of the Mass, hopefully they'll create in them an ache and a longing for the Mass. But ultimately, where this is coming from is their parents. That's the issue. The reason these kids aren't going to Mass is because their parents are not going to Mass. It's not like their mom and dad are daily communicants, but they're just not tagging along. The parents aren't getting the catechesis. And so anything that you can do to try to catechize the parents, and I know that's a tough route to get all the way to the parents, but the more that you can draw them into, and sometimes the parents learn the gospel through the teens. Sometimes it's the teens that end up bringing the parents back to the faith. And so continue to feed these kids, to pray for them, to fast for them. And then speaking of books, we got a question that came in from Lisa. She's asking, what books would you recommend for high schoolers?
It would depend what kind of book she's talking about. Is it like apologetics, chastity, fiction,
Yeah. What would you say? One of each?
Golly. Okay. Well, I think it's really important that we have our children read beautiful books. Like, I don't know about you, Jason, but I was never convinced when people told me that Harry Potter was a bad book because of the witchcraft. We might disagree on that. But from the little I experienced, I just thought people blew that way out of proportion. I didn't see that as a compelling reason not to read Harry Potter. And so I started reading Harry Potter to my kids, and I stopped it for different reasons. I just feel like it's not a good book to read to children. There's a lot of sort of consequentialist ethics in it. Harry or others might choose to lie and deceive in order to get what they want. And I just thought to myself, there are so many beautiful books out there. Why am I wasting my time on this? And so with my kids, and I know we're talking about teenagers, but we read the fairy tales. We'll read kind of Greek mythology for kids. We'll read Lord of the Rings. Right now we're beginning the Narnia series again. The imagination is such a powerful thing that we have to be really careful what we allow our kids to read, I think. And so as they grow older, just to make sure they're reading these good books, which are sort of a doorway to the great books. It's not necessarily a great thing, I don't think, if you were to give your 16-year-old here's the Apology by Plato or something and say, look, my kid's reading the great books. It's like, yeah, but he might not have the palate for it yet. Whereas if you read things like the Lord of the Rings and these other books, that can kind of prepare them to one day read the greater books.
Yeah, and she just chimed back in. Chastity is the topic that she was wondering in terms of
you'd be
books.
the man to address that.
So in terms of high school kids, if it's a boy, I'd recommend the book that we just came out with called The Dating Blueprint, that teaches guys how to date, when to date, who to date. Instead of just getting them a litany of prohibitions of don't do this, don't do that, it really teaches them dating etiquette, shows them this is how to ask a girl out without hiding behind cell phone. And this is how to have a relationship, know that it's not the right person for you, instead of ghosting the girl and falling off the deep, disappearing, and then she's wondering where on earth did you go. And so the dating blueprint I'd recommend for the guys. If it's a girl, I'd suggest How to Find Your Soulmate Without Losing Your Soul. That's the book I think we've got the most compliments on from the girls, of just like, yes, I read that book and it changed my life. If you want more like of a Q&A style book, if you really loved me is a book where the top answers to the top 100 questions on dating, relationships, and sexuality. One of my favorite stories, a girl emailed me once and she told me she was in like a real bad relationship. And so she goes to like a Barnes & Noble to find an answer to her relationship problem. She goes to the relationship section, and there's literally 1,000 books on dating, sexuality, relationships, romance, whatever. And she's like, how on earth am I going to find the answer to my question with all of these books? And it's like 9 o'clock at night, store's about to close, and a book falls off of the shelf and down at her feet. And she's like, what is that? And she looks around, there's nobody around, and she picks up this book, and it's the book I wrote, If You Really Loved Me. And she's like, what is this? And she opens it up, and it's 100 questions and answers, and she opens up to the page that has the question that she came into the bookstore looking for the answer to. And she freaks out. She's like, oh my gosh, who is this book for? And she turns into the dedication page, which says For Mary, which was her name.
Oh my!
And so she said, "Okay, God, I get the point." Took it home, and I think broke up with the guy. But it's good to know my book's at least endorsed by one guardian angel out there. And so any one of those 3 books, you can get them at chastity.com, super dirt cheap. Any other thoughts come to mind, Matt?
No, that's really good. That was a good answer. Let's see here. Patrick Pereira says, wow, I'm not sure if this is the Pereira I know or not. I know a Patrick Pereira. He says, I'm trying to bring more purity to the students at my school. My principal is putting purity books by Jason in the foyer to grab, but what else can I do to help bring the message to the school?
One thing that I've seen some schools do, instead of trying to think, how do I get Jesus to the kids? How do I get Jesus to the kids? Just bring the kids to Jesus. And what I mean by that is I'm seeing more and more schools having Eucharistic adoration during school. I've been at some schools where they have it literally from 7 in the morning till 4 in the afternoon, exposition all day long. Religion classes can come in and do journaling. They can come in and teach them different methods of prayer. Faculty members, parents can come in, and the campus ministers are kind of like sentinels where each of them is in charge of an hour. So instead of just sitting in study hour, they got to make sure they're in adoration that hour, and they keep it alive. And so often we get so hung up on human efforts and strategies and curricula and programs, and like just put them in front of Jesus Christ for an hour, or just 15 minutes, 20 minutes, just having his presence exposed in the Blessed Sacrament drives out so much evil. I think blessing the school and the classroom with holy water. I mean, a lot of times we get too hung up on just human productivity, and we forget the efficacy of the sacraments and the sacramentals. And so I'd say, see if you can run by your principal, hey, can we get Eucharistic adoration? Maybe not all day, every day, but, on First Fridays, it's exposed all day long. And then from there, it can grow. I mean, I'll come to some schools and I'm like, yeah, we do confessions, because I ask before every assembly, when can these kids get to confession next? And they're like, oh, we do confessions Lent and Advent. I'm like, great, for the 2 times the kids sin annually. I'll come to other schools and they're like, oh, confession? Yeah, we have that every day, 3 to 5 times a day. We have it before school, during break, at the lunchtime, after school. Father's in his office, and the kids line up down the hall.
Man, that's
literally
incredible.
A line of kids, like several times a day, because if the school prioritizes it, the kids will catch on. If the school puts it way down there, that's what the kids will do. Oh yeah, we got mandatory reconciliation service, in December to get ready for Jesus.
Yeah. It turns out this is the Patrick Pereira I know. So Patrick, hi, say good day to your beautiful parents for me. It's nice to see you on my channel. Any questions from your end? Or else I can keep going.
Yeah, keep going on yours. And then, do you have to read Theology Body before reading Love and Responsibility? I would say no. Love and Responsibility is written first, and so I think it's a great primer to lead up to TOB. But before you do read the actual TOB, I would recommend reading a book that explains the theology of the body, because the real TOB, I mean, that's dense, it's thick, it's heavy, it could get discouraging pretty quickly. You could, if you want to get something like Christopher West's Theology Body Explained, which goes audience by audience, explaining each of them, or if you wanted something more brief, I wrote a book called Theology Body in 1 hour. It actually takes more than an hour to read it, but I thought that was such a catchy title, I'd stick with it anyway. But that's a helpful book too.
Okay, I'm not sure how to pronounce this name, but let's say Jaos says, this might be a little off topic, but me and my friend are bisexual. Any advice on living chaste lives for Catholics like us?
Okay, well, I think the most important thing is to realize that bisexual is not who you are or what you are. If you experience same-sex attractions and opposite-sex attractions, your identity isn't LGBTQ this or that. Your identity is you are a beloved son or daughter of God the Most High. Any person in the world who defines themselves by their sexual attractions, their life is going to get confusing pretty fast. And that goes for all of us. I mean, if I'm attracted to a woman who's not my wife, is that my identity? Am I an adulterosexual because of that identity? And I think we also need to realize, one, your identity piece is a child of God. The second piece is that not every human attraction is a sexual attraction. We have been marinated in such a hypersexualized culture that makes us believe that if we feel any sense drawn to a member of the same sex or the opposite sex, that's a sexual attraction. And then therefore, we need to act out and manifest it in a sexual manner, or otherwise our freedom is being stifled and taken away from us. These are things that need to be gently unraveled and be like, okay, what's at the root of these things here? And I'd recommend if you go to our website, chastity.com, click the button to homosexuality and just watch some of the videos and the blogs there. They're done by people who experience same-sex attractions, bisexual attractions, and they share their stories. They write about what that's like and how they're pursuing a life of virtue, of holiness, and chastity. But the first piece we got to look at there is that identity piece. I am gay. I am bi. Like, no, you are a child of God. That's your identity. Because your attractions are a part of who you are, but if you're a book, they're on page 200. They're not the cover story. And so the first thing is to just be still before God, to see yourself as he sees you. First as a child, not as a bisexual. And so this is not to say that your attractions or experiences are not consistent and persistent and real and powerful. No, yeah, they are. But they still don't constitute the deepest truth of who you are as a child of God.
Beautiful. Lots of people are kind of commenting while you're saying things like this. Katie Rose says, Jason is talking about it right now. I guess she's talking to somebody else in the comment thread. So this is awesome. Did you want to take a few more questions and then begin to wrap up?
Yeah, sure.
All right. If people want to, feel free to comment, like the video. That helps with the algorithm. And do us a favor. If we've said anything today, please share the video. And be sure to check out Jason's podcast, Love Over Lust. See, this is the problem. I see what you mean now. You might have to change that title.
Yeah, we're thinking about it because, initially the graphic looked neat. Love is greater than lust. But you're like, oh, love versus lust. Love greater than lust. Love lust. So we may be doing some tweaks since we're only 6 episodes in. Maybe we need to shift gears so people can find it a little better. But, I got a question that came in from Claudia. She's wondering, my daughter and her boyfriend don't believe in chastity. What should I do to show them the way? She thinks I'm too religious and won't hear me. Okay, a couple thoughts for her. One is you want to try to, as much as you're able, try to help her to understand that you are her ally in this relationship. All you want is for her to give and receive authentic human love, for her to be truly loved and cherished and guarded. And because sometimes they start seeing you as the rival. You're the bad guy. You're trying to come between me and my boyfriend. But purity does not separate people any more than superglue does. It's technically between them, but it binds them if it's real love. If it's a utilitarian relationship, purity will rupture it because it'll bring to the surface that there isn't a true giving of selves going on. What's going on is a mutual using. And so she might be afraid, well, if we do that chastity thing, this guy's going to leave me. Well, maybe he will. But that could be the best thing that could ever happen to that relationship if he doesn't love her for the right reasons. So what do? 1, use Catholic motherly guilt to get her to watch or listen to some good things. Meaning, my birthday's coming up, or Mother's Day, you only gave me a lame gift card, and what I really want, is just to watch this one CD, or listen to this one talk, or read this one little pamphlet, and maybe you could give her a copy of Pure Womanhood, so that she could realize, you're not trying to religiously beat her over the head. You just want love for her. That's all you want. And you could give her one of these little booklets and ask her to read it. You could have her check out some of the stuff on our website or share a video. You could look on YouTube and type in my wife's name, Kristalina's testimony, and you could see, maybe share that little 10-minute clip of my wife sharing her story. Because if this thing is not rooted in authentic human love, it is going to implode at some point. and that's when you need to help her. You're going to love her. You're going to be there for her. And one last thing, notice that sometimes people will put up a wall so high, you have to go up to heaven to get over that. Meaning they might not listen to any arguments, but they can't argue with the grace that will rain on them through prayer, through fasting. Contact a local convent of religious sisters in your area. Give them the name of this couple. My daughter's this, her boyfriend's that. Please pray for them. I'm telling you, these nuns will storm heaven for you, and that is some heavy, heavy ammo that you are raining down on them. So your prayer, your fasting, and asking religious sisters to intercede for them as well, I think will bear a lot of fruit.
That's what I was going to ask you, Jason. Because you can give all the advice you want, you can pray for them. What do you do in the meantime if they're like, look, I've heard the arguments, I watched the cute little video you made me watch. Me and my boyfriend are still doing this. Me and my girlfriend are still doing this. Like, how do you love them in that and not sort of close them off?
Yeah, I mean, you got to make sure that not every single time you're talking to them, you're hitting on the subject, because it's a bit of a wound. It's a tender, very personal subject. And if every time you're like, hey, how's that thing going? How's that thing going? Eventually they're just going to recoil and pull away. So I once saw, I think it was like an anti-drug commercial where it says, if you talk to your kids about everything, it'll be a lot easier to talk to them about anything. Meaning take an interest in her work, in her friends, in her shoes, go shopping with her, go see a movie. Let her know that she can spend time in your presence without you harping on her dysfunctional relationship. And then she'll feel a little bit more at ease. Okay. And we might think, well, if I'm not talking about it every time, then eventually she'll think I'm endorsing it. No, she knows where you stand. Right. But you just want to just keep loving her and putting yourself in her presence and making sure you're not beating her over the head with it. I mean, give her resources, but she's a big girl, and then just you plant those seeds and then you water them with prayer.
Beautiful. Okay, as we wrap up, we've talked about your podcast, Love Over Lust. People could just type in your name and find it wherever they listen to their...
Love is greater than lust.
This is probably as annoying for you as when people say, oh, what's your Pints for Aquinas website? Yeah. It's not Pints for Aquinas, it's with.
Yeah.
Sorry. But how can people learn more about what you're doing and follow the great work you're doing, Jason?
So you can just go to chastity.com, and right there, the main page says subscribe to the podcast. So you can subscribe there if you're not already. Watch the videos there, read the blogs, get the resources that are dirt cheap, share them with other people. And then, as Matt had mentioned earlier, if you want to support our family and our ministry, Patreon is the way to do that. And it's just a way to support us to grow this thing, to get more guests on the show, and support the family as well, so that during this kind of dry season, we can continue to grow, the message flourish. And then you get a bunch of cool stuff for being on Patreon as well.
I'll put the links directly below so that people don't have to kind of type it in. I'll put a link to your podcast, link to Patreon. Sound good? Thanks so much, Jason. This was great.
Thank you, Matt. And thank you for everyone who's supporting Matt on Patreon, too. And if any of our subscribers haven't checked out Pints of Aquinas, you can support them. I mean, you look at that, the backdrop, the lighting, the mics, that's the fruit of the Patreon supporters. That's them investing in what they love. And so it's you guys that have been able to make it fruitful for him, and so continue to be a blessing for Pints of Aquinas. Pints for Aquinas.
Whoa!
In Aquinas. No, Pints in Aquinas, because I know he's
around Aquinas. Yeah. All right. Thanks a lot, Jason.
All right. God bless you, Matt. Good to be with you.